And we are good to go.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and get it started. So my name is Kathy. I'm the filling in for the chair of the Human Rights Commission Awareness Campaign Task Force. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Susan, do you want to go and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Susan. I live in South Salem. My pronouns are she, her, and I will go to David.
Hi, my name is David Reinhold. I'm on this committee, and my pronouns are he and him, and I'm a resident of Polk County.
Thank you. And my name
I'll
is
pass it to
Gretchen.
Gretchen.
Yep, I'm Gretchen. I'm staff to the commission and pronouns are she and her.
Okay. Do we have any public comment, Gretchen?
None received.
Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the January 25th meeting. And just one edit I noted for Gretchen, and you may have updated it, I just didn't look, but it did have the wrong year on it. It hadn't been updated to 2023 yet.
Oops.
It's hard to keep up. And then now it's going to be March next week. I don't know. Time is going by way too fast.
I know.
So would anyone like to move to approve the minutes from the January 25th meeting?
I move we approve the minutes from the January 25th meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion or objections? So I think those are just approved, right, Gretchen? We don't have to vote on that?
Correct.
If I remember
Yep.
correctly?
Yep, you're good.
So discrimination survey, David, were you here for that
I don't
conversation
think so.
with Professor Bradshaw? So on the agenda, and I'm sorry, so it asks areas under consideration for addition. I'm sure Joaquin probably had some thoughts about that.
I could kick that off, Kathy, if
Okay.
that would be helpful.
Sure.
You might remember, and David, FYI, Professor Bradshaw encouraged the task force to think about what areas might be under the Human Rights Commission's consideration where you might be wondering about things. Like, let's say you're thinking about an idea or a project, or you're wondering about direction for what can we work on in X arena. Do you have anything like that? Because those could become questions on the survey. And so at the last Human Rights Commission meeting, I think we invited people to be thinking about that. And I do have one update on that, so I can offer you one example. The Commission's LGBTQIA+ intersectional task force was thinking about that because they're considering direction for their task force this year. And so they were just meeting, and what they did to think about this was look at other examples of surveys in other municipalities. They found an example in San Francisco that led them to think about potentially proposing 3 questions. And I have this in writing, and I have the link to their example survey as well. But it was essentially thinking about, as one of the commissioners put it, asking something like, in what way or ways do you successfully experience community? Conversely, what impedes your sense of inclusion? Let's see, was there a third? Yeah, that's essentially the concepts. But there was a more, let's see if I still have it up. There was another, oh, I don't have it up anymore. But there were a couple of ideas such as along those lines about what helps and hurts with people fully experiencing the life of the city that they thought they'd propose. So I can send that out in an email so you have it better constructed and include the link to the survey that they were looking at for examples. But that's an idea of something that you could consider, oh yeah, we could or could not add that to the, and by add, I mean offered to Marianne. I figure that the task force will be able to benefit from the expertise of the professor and the students.
Mhm.
We could answer the question, like, what are the areas that we're trying to think about and understand? And then they'd be best at constructing the questions.
Right. Those are some good questions. I like I like that approach,
I do too.
leaving it more open.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's what is the timeline that Marianne had told us? It doesn't class start, is that April that we would need to have something prepared? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So you still have a meeting on March 22nd to
Yeah.
continue this discussion and be thinking about it. Like, I know the city's kicking off an equity assessment in 23. And so I haven't done this yet, but it occurs to me I could ask the folks planning that, would there be a preliminary question that would be helpful to ask the general public,
Mhm.
before that work? And so I thought I could ask that question and then offer that as an idea. Because I know that
Yeah.
the idea of the equity assessment came out of those equity asks a little bit ago. So I can see the progression there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I know what we had talked about, Manel's here. In prior meetings was getting more specifics about if somebody has experienced or witnessed discrimination, more specifics about where that occurred. And those are the things I had kind of written down.
Yeah.
Was it at a restaurant? Was it at your employment? Was it at your, was it a landlord situation? Something like that so that we can get a little bit more specifics about where those things are happening. And then I don't know if we want to, we've talked, well, I think it may have been at our last full commission meeting. We talked about the different ways to reach the community, and maybe is there room to throw in a question about what is the best way for the Human Rights Commission to communicate with you, or how would you prefer to receive communications? I don't know if we want to ask that. I know that there's limited space, but that's something else that we might consider if we want to get a little more direction there. I don't know. We were just talking about the annual discrimination survey. If there's any areas that we want to consider proposing for addition, and just kind of continuing on our conversation from last meeting. And Joaquin is not here. They have internet issues apparently, so we might have a quick meeting. But. Susan or David, any thoughts from you about areas to add?
I like the ideas that have been proposed. And I like your idea about maybe a preliminary question, thinking about, how we get the foundation.
I have a question since I wasn't here at the last meeting. So what are these questions going to be answered by the full commission? I mean, are they going to be asking questions too? I was just wondering the logistics behind it. And does those questions come to awareness, and then from awareness goes to the professor? Is that how it works, or?
Gretchen, I might look to you for
Sure.
guidance on that.
Yeah, I think if my memory serves me, yes, David, and we're kind of in the middle of that right now. We asked, the professor invited this task force to answer that question. What's on your mind? What are you considering working on this year where additional questions on that survey would be helpful? And I remember we asked at the Human Rights Commission that question. And so they have had the chance to think about that. And that is the idea, that people would throw stuff back to this group. They could have done that. We could have received things by tonight, but I haven't received anything, or maybe by the next meeting. We still have the meetings in March to continue to clarify that. So it might be fine that we don't have a lot of it. Well, the LGBTQ task force has given us some suggestions and input, but if there's not others, maybe that's fine. And to Kathy's point, we don't want the survey to become ginormous, and we've got several ideas here, so we probably don't want to add too many things. But yeah, that's the idea. And then this task force would offer to the professor, here's what we've come up with. Here are the areas that we're interested in that might lend themselves to questions on the survey.
So then who kind of narrows that list down? Is it this group that narrows that list down?
Yeah, that's how I would see it.
Okay.
And ideally that would happen at the March 22nd meeting. And so I think what you've got right now is the ideas that just came from the LGBTQ task force. The idea of if there's a preliminary question around the city's equity assessment, And then the suggestion Kathy made about what's the best way for the commission to reach you. Plus, I would pull forward all the stuff from our last meeting about getting more specific, to Kathy's point about if you experience discrimination, tell us about locations and additional detail. We wanted that. And then we did also have other outreach ideas, but that's a little bit different than this particular question.
And if I
Okay.
remember correctly from last year, the students had, after they had gone and discussed in their class the survey design and maybe what would and wouldn't work, they came back with what they recommended or what they would like to do and wanted to make sure it was okay with us. And so there was that back and forth
Correct.
between, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I think you had some thoughts too about what to include in the survey if we're to change it up a little bit. What other things you might like to see?
Mine wasn't really about additional questions. It was more like if we're trying to have more effective, like maybe broader responses for many people who feel like it's not relevant. I wondered if the city might want to, or if the group might want to frame it as a livability survey, because we're constantly talking about livability, balancing livability of people who, you know, are looking at messes and things, some of the health hazards that come up when homeless people are settling, and yet when unsheltered individuals don't have anywhere else to go, you know, living with a few rats or trash is better than nothing. So the city's constantly trying to balance those, understandably. But if we instead have called it discrimination, knowing that the city is constantly looking for that balance, would there be any value in calling it like a livability survey, but hone in on the parts of livability that this group, you know, deals with, which would be discrimination, and maybe flipping it from have you witnessed discrimination? Because maybe I don't feel like I've ever been discriminated against, but maybe I've seen some. So if I feel like the questions that are first are actually things I can answer, and if it was about livability, in terms of, are we living up to our values of being diverse and inclusive? And the flip side of that is, you know, are people experiencing discrimination? And I sent some draft narrative as far as like maybe how the language could work if people want to go that direction at all. But I thought if nothing else, flipping it to have I witnessed discrimination as opposed to have I experienced it would make it more relevant to more people.
I like that idea because that's happened to me. I haven't been the person being discriminated against, but I've been with people when there has been discrimination. And I think you're right. I think that broadens the scope.
I agree. I like the wording, livability survey. I think it encompasses everything.
And you'd have to hone into the livability that you guys are honing in on, because, you know, your scope isn't as broad as the whole city scope. But as far as inclusiveness, diversity, welcomeness, are, you know, can this survey assess, is Salem meeting its values for diversity, inclusion, welcomeness? And these questions are designed to kind of assess that. Are all people feeling welcome and included and like they're being treated fairly? And then going into questions like, have you seen anyone being treated unfairly? And then going to, and still using the language of discrimination, but explaining like why we're asking about discrimination, because it relates to inclusiveness and fairness and equity and welcomeness, which are some of our city's values.
Yeah, I like it.
I should probably not admit this, but I can't remember the last survey. And did we have questions about accessibility for folks with disabilities?
I don't believe there was anything specific to that.
I'm not remembering anything, but like I said, sometimes I have a bit of a Swiss cheese brain.
I would remember because I was asking everybody on the streets, but that one is not, I mean, I guess it's kind of implied if I feel discriminated against because I can't get into a restaurant or something. So there's an implication, but not, I mean, I guess you could add, have you felt like things are not accessible, inclusive, diverse, and welcoming towards you? But I think it's more implied than actually asked about that.
I'm thinking. And again, I don't know how much of an issue this is, but I know, I mean, I have a friend who goes into one of the restaurants that well, I don't think she goes there anymore, but she used to have to go in through the kitchen.
No.
Which, is not the best way to get into a place.
Yeah.
So I would wonder.
Yeah, no, that's a good suggestion. I think we've got actually quite a lot of things to go through and talk about at our next meeting. Yeah.
I can try to
Good.
package them up and do a short list, so you've got it in front of you,
So that would be
maybe
super.
both for the commission and then for the next meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think that name of the survey kind of matches up better with our Salem project, because that's more of a livability study or change of livability. And then that survey kind of encompasses all these different things that we're talking about. A lot of times people won't necessarily, when you throw a survey in front of somebody, you're just catching what's in their mind, that top of mind. But if you start adding things like the ADA and stuff like that, it starts getting their mind to think about different things they experienced or they saw. Instead of applying. I don't think we should ever ask the question to apply. I think we need to be more direct.
I think we do too.
Yeah, especially if we want to get more actionable results, things that we can actually do something about. I agree with that.
Well, and I like the term livability because it's more positive. If you think, we don't want to set people up to complain. We want them to be aware and we want them to think about the livability. Yeah, I like it. It's more positive.
Yeah, good. Okay. Gretchen, should I give you a minute to finish writing your notes?
Thank you. I just got it. Thank you. I appreciate that though.
Are we ready to move on to the next agenda item? Any more thoughts about the survey? Okay, so the next one is the commission member position description draft. And I think this just was emailed out today. I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at it. It's pretty short. But it's a starting point. Susan or David, did you have a chance to take a look at it?
And I like it.
David, did you have a chance to?
I have not, but I can read it
Okay.
real fast.
It's not very long. And I kind of thought about adding more to it, but I guess I wanted to get feedback from the group first before. I think there's much more we could say about like what it's like to attend meetings and what the different task forces are, but our task forces are. But at the same time, I didn't want it to get too long because I think we lose people if they have to read through too much. So.
I agree with you about the brevity. If you have to read something 50 pages long, you won't read it.
Yeah,
At
I
least
think it
I
tends to turn people off if they have to go through too much.
Mhm.
Is that something that maybe we want to save for the next meeting so Joaquin can have some feedback as well before we take it further? David, go ahead. You unmuted.
Oh, I just read it and it looks good to me.
Kathy, if you like, I could email Joaquin, confirm if it looks good to them as well. Then it could be attached to the full Human Rights Commission agenda and it can progress.
Sure. If that works for Joaquin, that sounds good to me.
Okay, yeah, checking in with Joaquin.
Okay.
I showed it to, I have a person who's an intern interning with me right now, and I showed it to them. And I said, you haven't been with this group before. And if you were thinking about wondering about joining, what would this be like for you? And they read it and they said, this is good. And they thought it was really important that you included the time commitment.
Mhm.
They said that they think that's always a question. So got an outside input too.
Oh, good. Oh, thank you. I appreciate you asking.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So name change for task force, I think I'd prefer to wait until Joaquin can be here for that.
Yeah, I'd like for him to be.
Me too. That was his original idea. And I'm not sure about all the ins and outs of it.
And same thing with monthly column. I'm not sure where we are with that, to be honest with you. I know we keep kind of touching on it, but I'm not sure where we are and where the status is at. Is that okay if we put that one aside and bring it back next time, or anybody have any thoughts about that? Okay. The awareness communication, Gretchen, I did see an email come out, I think, was it today, about
Yeah.
for February?
Yeah.
So I think we need one for March. I don't know if I
I
have one.
actually can offer an idea here if that's okay.
Sure, yeah.
Members of the LGBTQIA plus task force, intersectional task force, were having an agenda item about how they can increase representation and more participation in their group. Someone there suggested that could a communication go to the general Human Rights Commission email group
Mhm.
that explains the existence of both subcommittees and encourages people to consider attending a meeting and getting more involved, explaining that people don't have to be members of the Human Rights Commission to be members of the subcommittees. So I thought I'd go ahead and offer that. They asked if that could be considered, and since that's what we do with that monthly communication, I thought I'd bring it here and offer it for March. Because they're down to 3 members and they're looking to expand.
I think I saw both Susan and David nod heads. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that would be when we get to the point where we're doing the monthly column. I mean, that's the type of thing that I think we would include in that also, but absolutely, it makes sense to do a general email.
Great. I'm happy to put that together. I'm getting some feedback from them and I'd be happy to put something short together and get it out. Thanks very much.
So where does that leave us? Member remarks and announcements. I feel like this is often something that it's always on the agenda, but I don't know that people have much to say about that.
Thank you, Kathy, for filling in.
I wasn't prepared, but it's a good thing that the agenda was nicely laid out today. So. Is there anything else that any of you think we should talk about tonight before we do adjourn, before the next full commission meeting or the next task force meeting? Go ahead, Linnell.
This isn't related to the HRC, but just trying to get the word out, because if anybody knows about shelters in town and makes referrals, Safe Sleep is currently, we were going to be moving to St. Mark's on Friday, but because of the weather, we're delaying the move. So right now we're still at our regular location. We'll probably move in a week instead of just 2 days. And we're kind of freezing in place because we literally have boxes everywhere. But if someone was desperate, we're going to find a way. But we don't actually have very many open beds right now, but we'd find a way if someone was desperate. And in the meantime, we hope to move in a week instead. So if you're ever bumping into people who need shelter, right, you can just let them know that, by early March, we should be operating in St. Mark's.
Yeah, the weather didn't exactly cooperate with the
I
time that
know.
we moved, did it? Yeah. Thank you, Linnell. Anybody else have anything else for? No, David?
No, I do not.
Okay. I don't have anything else. Gretchen, did you have anything else?
No,
group?
thank you.
Well, it's nice to see you all. Hopefully the weather doesn't get too much worse before it gets better. All right, so we will see you next month for our commission meeting.